A'udzubillahi minasyaitonirrajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And good day everyone. Inshallah, today we will proceed our lecture on hazard analysis, critical control points, or HACCP. And this is the example of HACCP logo from KKM and also from Moody International. This is the lecture outline for today's session. From introduction, we cover on prerequisite program and HACCP principle, and for sure your reference lah. We move on to the first topic on introduction on the food safety management system, FMS. So currently, usually we heard about HACCP, right? So currently there are three definition of FSMS, food safety management system. First is food safety, usually we call it as HACCP, the prevention of unintentional accidental adulteration, and it is from the science base and foodborne illness lah. Secondly, on the TEST, which the short form is on the food defense and threats, prevention of intentional adulteration, behavioral or ideological motivated. And lastly, on the VEST, or vulnerabilities, which is related to food fraud, prevention of intentional adulteration, which is related to economically motivated. So I'm sure that from time to time, these keywords will keep increasing with the new and latest definition. So we move on to our topics on HACCP. What is HACCP? In general, it is a scientific, rational, and systematic approach to identification, assessment, and control of hazards during production, processing, manufacturing, preparation, and use of food to ensure that food is safe when consumed. So basically, HACCP covers from the raw material until the end product phase lah. So this is some history of the HACCP, first developed by Pillsbury Corporation in 1960s to ensure safety of food for NASA space program. In general, it is related to the Apollo mission to go to the space lah. So they are thinking on how to bring food to the space, because they also concerned on the safety of the food itself. So they developed the program called as HACCP lah. This is the Pillsbury logo, and for your information, the company is still exists nowadays lah. This is some example of food that was bring to space station lah. This is a cheese sandwich, and this is a vacuum packed food lah that the astronaut used to eat in the space. Next, this is the some status of adoption of HACCP in general in the world. Firstly, in the WTO, World Trade Organization. Secondly, adopted by Codex Alimentarius Commission on the food hygiene. EU all food imports since November 1996. US and Canada on the fish and fishery product, and then US non-chef stable fruit juice mandatory for HACCP, and Japan, Brunei, Middle East countries require HACCP for import. Next, New Zealand and Australia, HACCP based food safety system for dairy meats. And in 1997, establishment of Malaysian certification scheme for HACCP in especially for our country lah. So the objective of application of HACCP, firstly, for sure it is for food safety purposes. Ensure that food will not cause harm to the consumer when it is prepared or eaten according to its intended use. And it is a more efficient quality assurance system, especially on reduction of costs, reduction of losses, prevention of foodborne illness, and protection of reputation for the company. This is the side objective of HACCP. For example, the case study of hamburger case, which is related to E. coli 0157, a driving force for change in food system and tradition in the industrialized world. Basically, this outbreak happened all over the country lah. In 1993, outbreak attributed to uncooked hamburgers causes 4 deaths and sickened hundreds of children, and resulted in a large food recall and claim up to $13 million. So this is the cost of not controlling or not monitoring the food safety system lah. So that's why they developed the HACCP and implemented HACCP in every category of foods, especially based on the flowchart before. Factors associated with food poisoning outbreak, firstly on the temperature abuse too long in the danger zone, which is from 4 to 6 degrees Celsius, preparation too far in advance, inadequate cooking such as undercooked, raw or reheating, poor hygiene of staff, cross-contamination, especially during slaughtering, raw or cooked material, dirty environment and storage, presence of unwanted chemical and foreign matters such as allergen, unsightly foreign matters. This is some example of factor associated lah. So in nowadays, maybe from time to time this factor will increase and varies. So besides that, there are changing pattern in food poisoning. Before this, it's usually local issue. Nowadays, it's become a widespread or multi-state or even international issue. Especially, for example, if in Malaysia there are occurs of outbreak, maybe the same issue is also occur in overseas. Next is before in traditional way, it require high dose for the outbreak to happen. But nowadays, with low infective dose, the outbreak can occur. Organism readily isolated, risk undetected by normal method. Traditionally normal food processing will eliminate pathogen, but today it may survive in the pathogen can survive in some processes. Low mortality, currently it's high mortality, and traditional known to be associated, only specific food is associated with foodborne, but nowadays almost all food will associated with the foodborne disease. So basically, this is due to the increased virulence or resistance, increased transmission, and also increased host susceptibility lah. The main reason for changing pattern. We move on to the prerequisite program for HACCP or PRP. Basically, these are control measures that are important in reducing the likelihood of hazard occurring, but are not usually directly related to activities taking place during production. For example, mostly the plant which has HACCP, they also have GMP, pest control, traceability, cleaning and sanitation, approved supply program, and also training. This is the basic program that is required for HACCP. It is a system assuring food safety by having prevent problem before it occur. So HACCP is managing the issues, capable of accommodating changes, procedure to monitor audit and practices, identify specific hazard and establish measures, and scientific based systematic. It is a cost-effective assurance of food safety, focus on prevention rather than end product testing. Clearly defined practices under which plan can be applied throughout the food chain and provide evidence that ensure production or process conditions are under control in the plant. So this is the HACCP plan. It is a formal document which contains the detail of everything critical to product quality or safety. It consists of purpose and scope of HACCP system, product description and intended use, process flow, hazard analysis, HACCP audit table, justification and validation of ethical limit, verification procedure, review procedure, and any supporting document. This is the in HACCP plan document. This 9 document is required. This is some example of product description and intended use. For example, in biscuit, the important product characteristic: weight, moisture, fatty acid, flavor. So is it ready to eat or is it not ready to eat? How is the packaging? How long is the shelf life, and etc. This is example of process flow diagram or PFD. Different product will have different PFD lah, from the receiving to the packaging. Next, this is example of hazard analysis. How do we measure that it is a critical control point, CCP? We will cover this topic after this. Next, this is another example of hazard analysis. How do we measure, is it a CCP or OPRP or not? Because if that stage is a CCP, we have to do something to overcome the issues lah. For example, of potential of microbial contamination. How we want to ensure that if the risk occur, how to prevent the issue lah. This is the example of hazard audit table from STEP: hazard, control measure, CCP, CL, critical limit, monitoring procedure, corrective action, and also records lah. This is the example of the content. For example, in the cooking, so the critical control point related to cooking is biological, because the survival of pathogenic microorganism is high possibility to occur in the cooking process if the temperature and time of cooking is not controlled. So continuous for every batch, product up to, this is the critical limit, product up to 350 gram, cooking up to 50 minutes, product up to 400 gram, cooking for 20 minutes. So different gram of product should have different cooking time. You cannot use the same cooking time for different weight of product, so it will cause the biological contamination in general. So this is the corrective action. For example, this procedure critical limit is not fulfilled, so the rejection of the batch, immediate cooling, so we have to cut off the production line. So this is example of HACCP analysis lah. Why HACCP is needed? It is a proven food safety management system that is based on prevention, proven but for prevention only, not on the taste or etc. Identify where in the process the hazard are likely to occur. It is possible to put into place the control measure required. This ensure that food safety is managed effectively and reduce reliance on the traditional method in inspection and testing. Before this, without HACCP, we have to check every time we have the product is ready, finished. But during HACCP, we will reduce that activity. The activity is still there, but the volume is reduced. Inspection is not the best approach toward producing a safe product, such as visual inspection, human sense, attention, and power of observation. So the parameter is very subjective. To detect chemical and biological hazard, 100% testing is simply not possible because such tests are nearly always destructive. Sampling plan are used, such as analytical method, sensitivity, and ability to trap hazard. Often randomizing sampling is used, and the probability of detecting the hazard is therefore low. So by using HACCP, we will reduce the detection and the analysis for controlling the quality of the product. Besides, we also need to consider on the cost. If we conducted too many analysis, we will have too many sample for sure. So that's why HACCP is needed. Use of statistical sampling technique will increase the probability of detection, but it can never be absolute unless the whole batch is analyzed, and it is impossible for us to analyze all batches. So we have to control the batch. For example, 5 samples for each batch. If we need to use more sample, it will lead to loss for our production cost. There are some misconceptions on the HACCP. Firstly, HACCP will ensure that the end product will be good quality and will meet legal requirement. It is not correct, because it is related to the procedure in the production and also the formulation of the product itself. HACCP will not cover that. Primary aim of HACCP is to control food safety, thus to ensure that all food produced is safe for consumption. Contamination of a cooked meat pie with organism likely to cause illness is a food safety hazard and should be controlled using HACCP. But an overbaked cake is quality issue, so we have to differentiate between food safety and food quality here. HACCP only control on monitoring on the food safety, not the food quality. For example, HACCP will not ensure that your product is delicious, but HACCP will ensure that your product is safe to be consumed. That's an example. Sometimes it's taken as healthy and safety. HACCP is not healthy and safety issues. To develop a successful HACCP system, it is essential to understand what constitutes a food safety hazard and how to control it. This is the main point for the HACCP. So type of company that will implement HACCP, it is applicable throughout the food supply chain and can also be applied to non-food, such as primary packaging company. So this is some example of the company, such as primary producer can apply HACCP, and even processor can also apply HACCP with the different parameter for sure. So type of company, continued, caterer can also apply HACCP, food service can also apply HACCP, even consumer, we ourselves can apply HACCP, but we cannot get the certificate. There are many similarities between catering and the way that a domestic kitchen operates. Domestic kitchen means our home. And study carried out demonstrate that it is possible to use HACCP technique to good effect in a domestic kitchen. So we ourselves can implement HACCP principle in our home in general. How do we know HACCP works? So first, based on the customer complaint numbers, such as hotline, social media, and survey. Next, based on audit, we will have audit for HACCP. And lastly, based on test result lah, by QC team, external lab or COA report. So this is how we know, because we have to measure the effectiveness of the HACCP lah, for sure. Next, HACCP study is done by HACCP team. Basically, we will have 4 to 6 people which are trained in a HACCP approach. Large business may include QA, manufacturing, so many departments lah kan. Meanwhile, small business may only need 1 to 2 people only, because the production scale is smaller and the size of the company is also smaller. What is important is that the people in the team have in-depth knowledge lah of how the product is made. They also need to technical know-how. So basically, that's why we need to include the QA, manufacturing, on the processing, on the supplier, on the HR, and etc. in our team lah. So HACCP plan is output of the HACCP study. It is a document or folder and contains all the information related to CCP, critical control point, together with the operating standard of the CL, critical limit. Once HACCP study is completed and implemented, it need to be kept up to date. So the data need to be keep updated every year. So verify as being correct or maintained. So for sure lah, we have to keep updated on the parameter also. What is HACCP cost? It is not just the amount of money, but it is also time during HACCP training, either external cost or internal cost, on the administrative support, on addition temporary resources, validation, time to review, on the equipment, or even the verification activities lah. So this is some undercover cost lah, cost di sebalik pelaksanaan HACCP book, not only just the value of the money lah. Next, benefit from the cost or from the investment of the HACCP. Basically, you will reduce the online product testing, especially on the product use and human resources. The possible reduction of analysis cost, because you already control from the starting of the process to the end. Earlier release of finished product, so we don't have to stock our stock in the warehouse for the quality and check and etc. When control is lost, can run up to a fortune in loss of sale, court cost and compensation, plus loss of confidence and its effect lah. If this element is not controlled, it will lead to a major cost, which is maybe out of our box lah. We move on to the part 3 on the HACCP principle. There are 7 principles of HACCP and its application. So basically, an effective HACCP system need to be planned, studied, implemented, verified, and maintained in a logical, systematic way. So the keyword is logic, systematic way lah. HACCP study itself is essential, made up of first 5 to 7 principles. First principle is to map out the food process step by step lah. For example, in boiling an egg, how to boil an egg. So this is the activities lah. Different time will have different shape and taste of the egg lah. So this is timing. How to boil egg. First, we remove the egg from the refrigerator. At the same time, we will fill a pan with cold water and heat the water, and then we add the number 1 egg into the pan. We will boil for 8 minutes because we want to make a soft boil, and then we remove the egg from the pan and serve. This is some simple example lah. So we embedded the process in the HACCP principle. So basically, this is HACCP principle from 1, conduct hazard analysis, 2, determine the CCP, 3, principle 3, establish critical limit, establish system to monitor control, establish corrective action, 6, establish procedure, 7, establish documentation. Okay, so this is the repetitive of the HACCP principle lah. So let's continue from the A. Is it critical to control the process boiling or product? This is some issues related to egg lah. This case happened in Terengganu on the puding buih issue lah. This is basically from the source of the egg, from the company or individual who sell this product lah. So this is analysis. We have 4 questions here. First, do control measure exist in this step? This is based on the map that I showed in previous slide. The mapping from the first step, first question to the end question, for us to determine the CCP, critical control point lah. First, we have to ask, do control measure exist in this step or subsequent step for identical hazard? If no, it is not a CCP. If yes, move to that question. For example, is it removing the egg will cause hazard? No lah kan. So adding egg in the pan, yes, high possibility for control measures lah. Does this step eliminate or reduce the likely occurrence of hazard to an acceptable level? Does adding egg to the pan will eliminate or reduce occurrence of hazard? For sure no lah kan. So in this part, boiling will cause the elimination. Could contamination with the identified hazard occur in the excess of acceptable level? For example, by adding the egg in the pan, there can be contamination. And then, will subsequent step eliminate the identified hazard to reduce likelihood occurrence? Maksudnya, step seterusnya tu ada tak melakukan apa-apa tindakan untuk menyebabkan berlaku pengurangan occurrence of contamination? Yes. So if yes, no CCP lah. In this part, step number 5 is the CCP, because does this step eliminate or reduce the likely occurrence of the hazard to an acceptable level? If yes, it is a CCP. So you also have to control this part lah kan, the decision making. If yes in here, move to the next question. If yes in here, it is a CCP. If yes in this part, this question, move to the next question. And if no in this part, it is a CCP, but in this time it is yes, so it is not a CCP. So based on this table or this analysis, at each of the 6 process step identified, the hazard team will assess whether there are any food safety hazard of concern related to principle 1. At step 1, they might identify salmonella. Step 1 means take out the egg from the refrigerator. There are possibility of salmonella for sure. Then consider whether the step is removing the egg from the refrigerator is critical. Is it critical? So no lah kan, because the egg is going to be boiled in the later step. That's why it is important for us to lay out all the process flow lah, PFD. At step 5, boiling, like to conclude that the act of boiling is critical for controlling salmonella. It is microorganism which can easily destroyed by through cooking. In other words, if we this process is not completed or less time or low temperature, it will cause the growth of salmonella in our product. So it is a CCP. How long the egg must be boiled? It is a critical limit. So that's why important for us to identify the parameter time and temperature in here, to ensure that salmonella is destroyed lah. How to measure that? In manufacturing facility, it is usually determined through various tests and measurements. So we have to make some study on what is the best time or temperature for us to disrupt the salmonella in egg. So we have to do some literature or even some experiment to justify the result lah. Having proven the relationship between time and temperature, HACCP team has to decide how often to monitor the boiling time and the water temperature, and what to do if requirements are not achieved. For example, how to monitor the process? Is it how many egg is required to put in the pan? 10, 20, 30, and etc. So to ensure that the temperature and time we can achieve our finished product lah, desired product. Once the study is completed, the team will need to carry out validation activity. So we have to confirm lah. We have to, for example, we have to swab the sample egg on the agar medium to check on the salmonella content. Verification activity typically include tests, random sampling, analysis, review of monitoring record, and etc. Verification will include review of monitoring record, which show that the egg was boiled for 8 minutes. We also have to record every time we undergo the boiling process. We have to record the boiling time and temperature. It is the verification activities that principally lead to the completion of number of documents. This is the step number 6. So if we can make a summary or audit table, this is example: remove egg from the refrigerator. The possibility hazard is biological, but it is not CCP because in the next stage we will undergo boiling and etc. In the step 5, boiling, important for us to kill the salmonella, so we have to boil for 8 minutes and then etc. Can HACCP by itself guarantee safe food? No. We need support from other management system. For example, normal management practices, PRP itself on GMP and GHP. It is no point if you have HACCP but your staff is injured or even sick. So it will cause contamination also in the food. It is no point you apply HACCP while your supplier didn't give a good product. contaminated product, cross-contaminated product, etc. Quality management system act as a framework within which any process activity can be managed. So, normal management practices, management commitment. In HACCP, we need full understanding of its purpose, benefit, process, timeline, and associated costs. Recognizing the factor driving its adoption, such as regulatory requirement, consumer demand, and internal improvement goal. We also need leadership. HACCP team play a key role in developing and implementing the HACCP system. Provide an opportunity to motivate the workforce by emphasizing hygiene standard and fostering pride in their role within the organization, and also project management. HACCP system is a major project, and the work involved can considerable, particularly in a complex business lah. So we need everyone's support. Audit team, we need them to ensure, to measure the compliance, and then we need the process mapping from the production line, systematic way in getting understand the game process. Even it is the first activity undertaken by the HACCP team in our principle, we have to map up the process for again. And then data analysis and admin, analyze customer complaint and HACCP verification, where CCP are recorded and reviewed. Next, problem solving also often run as a facilitated brainstorming session with all parties involved. We also need team skill, openness and trust between department and even on the management. Lastly, on the record keeping and documentation lah, it is a common activities which is required for any standard apply lah. So this is a PRP from the raw material control, personal hygiene, building and equipment, trace and recall, pest control, waste and drainage, sanitation, and also operational control. This is the PRP that I mentioned in the earlier slides. So what is QMS? So HACCP is part of QMS. It aims to provide the prevention and non-conformity, placing emphasis on effective corrective action and getting it right first time. There are many controlling steps in any processes. Some will be critical for food safety, but others will control the quality and legal attributes. When identifying the deficiencies, it is important to be clear about what form part of the HACCP system and what is or should be in place as a foundation and support to HACCP implementation. It can be helpful to communicate in relationship to employee earlier on the program. For example, personal hygiene practices such as hand washing and facilities and suitable PPE are utmost important in helping to protect in any food and handling operation. So, no matter how good is your facility, but if you didn't control on the personal hygiene, there is no point for you to in the HACCP lah. Besides, nowadays there are many HACCP training provided by outsiders lah, third parties kan. So it is your opportunity as a student nowadays. You can join this training lah, such as from Halal Academy, HDC Training Center, SGS, and etc. lah. So it is a very good practices, and I hope that your company in your internship soon will guide you, will provide you this kind of training lah, because it will grow yourself on the food safety environment lah. So as a summary, on the QMS, basically this is the QMS. There are total food safety. There are two categories from the HACCP and PRP. HACCP study, plan, team, training and awareness, commitment. And then on the PRP, hygiene, building, sanitation, pest control, raw material, waste, operation, trace and recall procedure. Besides, the CP, control point, managed by process parameter limits and PRP. Meanwhile, for CCP on the food safety, validated CL critical limit managed by HACCP plan. And then it is also part of the quality management system. So, getting started with the HACCP, it is should be started by the HACCP team lah. A HACCP team based on knowledge of raw material, product, process and hazard. So this is the members of our HACCP team, from the supplier, QA, R&D, etc. But the core team is 3 lah. So first on QA or technical, which is expert in handling microbes, chemical and physical hazard. He understand the risk and knowledge of the measures needed. And then on the operation and production team, responsibility and working knowledge of the operation activities needed. And lastly, engineering department, knowledge on the process, equipment and also environment. This is the additional expert. So basic requirement for them are HACCP training and management skill. So that's why for you to involve in this HACCP team, you will have to go for basic HACCP training lah. or skill. So ideally 4 to 6 member, but it depends on the size of your company. Next, on the baseline audit, companies who are putting in HACCP system solely because of legal or consumer requirement may want to do a bare minimum to gain compliance, i.e. to produce a HACCP plan which satisfy the regulator or consumer. Baseline audit is a good opportunity to evaluate a number of elements such as status of the PRP program, the skill base within the organization, and to begin talking about the steps needed to fill the gaps and to control and procedure already in place and which will now be incorporated into HACCP. So basically, baseline audit, you have to understand your company first lah, or your process first before applying for full audit. So on the planning of the HACCP project, there are two categories. Firstly, a linear HACCP plan. HACCP principles are applied to each product or process individually, covering all stages from raw material to the finished product. It's a linear process. HACCP is most effective in simple operation with few product type and processes. For example, a bakery producing one type of bread, satu jenis roti sahaja, so it is easier lah. And then modular, HACCP work best when basic process are used to produce multiple products, same process but different product. Each processes is treated as a module, and the module are combined to form the complete HACCP plan. For example, pizza, same base but different topping. This is just example, yeah. So planning the HACCP. Next, generic HACCP plan. On the third type of HACCP plan, generic HACCP plan are useful for similar operation at different location, but must be adapted to avoid overlooking hazard. They can be linear or modular, so it can be combination of that, offering a helpful starting point. This plan work best with mature hygiene program and when tailored to meet specific local needs. In this image, example is Gardenia. So Gardenia, we have one in Hilton Garden, Gardenia Bread in Puchong, Gardenia Sale and Distribution, and Gardenia in Taman Sri Muda. So basically, and Gardenia Bandar Kemunting, Kilang Gardenia. So Gardenia is some example of company who implemented the generic HACCP plan. So PRP, preliminary step in the development of the HACCP plan. Basically, we need to assemble a HACCP team which come from different department, and then describe the product on the composition and etc. Describe the intended use and consumer of our product. Then flow diagram to describe the process from purchasing to the distribution or end product, and on-site verification of flow diagram to ensure all part of process are included. This is the important part. And then we implement the 7 principle of HACCP. This is example of HACCP plan. First, firm name, address, and the product information. So we need to conduct the hazard analysis. It is a process of collecting and evaluating. This is step number 6 on the 7 principle of HACCP. Process of collecting and evaluating information of the hazard and condition leading to their presence to decide which are significant for food safety and therefore should be addressed in the HACCP plan. The hazard analysis involves examining each step in the flow diagram and assessing potential hazard. This may arise from raw material, design of plant, the food properties, the process, and even the personnel who handle the food. It should be include the risk, the assessment of risk and severity. Risk is estimate of likely occurrence, while severity means the seriousness of the hazard. The qualitative or quantitative evaluation, survival or multiplication, product persistence, and any condition. That's why in this HACCP team, we need team members from the QA, QC, and even on the production who has knowledge on our product. Next, we have to conduct the continue on the conduct the hazard analysis. Decide which hazard are significant and must be addressed. During identifying the CCP, we have to decide which one is most important in our process flow. HACCP team must rely upon the opinion of the expert, list significant hazard, and any preventive measure. So basically, when we ask the expert or experienced people, they know how to control the measure, how to prevent the measure. Identify significant hazard based on severity of outcome. Is it possible can lead to death or etc. Likelihood of occurrence, how often they reported. That's why we need the data. Vulnerable group of customer, for example, infant, children, and etc. number of likely victims, such as reported or statistic lah. So this is some example of source of contamination again, from the raw material to the process step. Raw material, maybe we have a microbiological contamination, physical and also chemical lah. Next, preventive measure or control. Control measure shall mean any action or activity that can be used to prevent or eliminate a food safety or reduce it to an acceptable level. If we cannot fully eliminate, we have to reduce it to an acceptable level. For example, on the bacteria survival or multiplication, we have to undergo heating process or rapid cooking to reduce or eliminate the contamination lah. This is some example of how they reduce the possibility of contamination while they are separating the bundle of materials. They are separating into different size. So maybe some waste can be in the smallest material here. This is some another example on the metal detection, on how they want to detect any foreign metals in the product. So step cooking, for example, identify hazard, enteric pathogen. How to prevent the enteric pathogen? We have cooked sufficiently to kill enteric pathogen, especially on the temperature and time of cooking. Next, principle 2, determine the CCP. CCP, operational step or stage in the food chain at which control can be applied and is essential to prevent or eliminate a food safety hazard or reduce it to acceptable level. Same objective, eliminate or reduce. Information developed during a hazard analysis in principle 1 should be enabled the HACCP team to identify which step in the process are CCP. So previously we already did the decision tree, right? On the egg, how we determine that boiling is the CCP for egg. The decision tree is used after the hazard analysis. Hazard must be addressed in the hazard plan which has been identified. A subsequent step in the process may be more effective for controlling a hazard and may be the preferred CCP. More than one step in a process may involve in controlling a hazard. That's why we have to understand our process and our product. More than one hazard may be controlled by a specific control measures. So this is two examples of CCP decision tree. From the understanding, from the 1, 2, 3, 4 question, we can determine the CCP. And also this is another style, 1, 2, 3, 4 question. Determine the CCP next. Critical control point are allocated at any point. Allocated at any point where hazard need to be either prevented, eliminated or reduced to acceptable level. Example of CCP, this is common CCP: cooking, chilling, sanitation procedure, product formulation control and prevention of cross-contamination, and certain aspect of employee environment hygiene. So significant CCP, consistent and performances, consistency of performances, focus on resources, monitoring must permit rapid detection and correction, and trend towards non-compliance should be detected before the product is affected. What are critical? This is some example of CCP, basically related to cold storage, thermal processing, hot storage, and cooling or preparing food. Next, the third principle, establish critical limit. A criterion which separate acceptability from unacceptability. It is known as critical limit. Must be met for each preventive measure associated with a CCP. It is product is out of control, therefore the product may need to be rejected or quarantined. So if it didn't achieve the critical limit, it has to be rejected. A critical limit that serves as boundaries of safety for each CCP, go or no go, to accept or to reject. One or more preventive measure we can plan in our production line to ensure that it is to acceptable level. Critical limit may be for preventive measure such as temperature, time, physical dimension, humidity, and other parameter. That's why we have to do QC step in our production line. So this is some sticker for quarantine product. This is the limit, tolerance limit that we have to set during our production. If it reach higher than target limit, so we have to reject. If it's below critical limit or boundaries, we have also to reject. So it is important for us to have a tolerance in our processing parameter. Next, critical limit may be varied derived from source such as regulator standard and guideline. So we have to also to understand the guideline developed by the local authorities. Target level, specified value of parameter at this step. Action level, point above or below the target value. Means that if it above or below the target level, we have to do something. We have to do corrective action immediately. For example, the target level for chiller is 5. Action level is 1 or 7, and critical limit is 0 to A. So it because this is a critical limit that we set. For example, on frozen deliveries, target level is -18, action level is 15, and critical limit is 10 lah. So this is some example. Cooking is a CCP. What is the critical limit? So broiler temperature. So we have to set the numbers here for the production team to is able to control the parameter during the processing. Next, establish monitoring procedure. How do we monitor the process? Plan sequence of observation or measurement of control parameter to establish whether CCP is under control or not. Monitoring serves these purposes. First, it track the system operation, provide written document, make sure that CCP is under control, give early warning. That's why we have the tolerance before this, right? Initiate corrective action, record for verification and due diligence. For example, measuring or monitoring visual observation. We also have to have a online parameter lah during the production process. So this is how to read the data from the graph lah. This is a upper limit and this is a lower limit. So this is stratification. This is okay. This is maybe something wrong happened here. So we have to take action. We have to check on the process and etc. Maybe we also need to take some sample for us to detect what happened during the process, because it may occur from any time. Next, sufficient detail in the HACCP plan to cover what is the critical limit or tolerance. We have to know how to describe and monitoring procedure, including equipment and its calibration, where monitoring must be at the CCP or as close as possible, who is the individual responsible, clearly identify, properly trained, and will she available all the time, when is the monitoring system continuous or at well defined interval. This is some example on questioning your procedure. Next, establish corrective action. Any action to be taken when the result of monitoring at CCP deviated from the critical limit. What have you done? What action that you need to take if your parameter is above critical limit or below the critical limit. You cannot easily stop the production and scrap everything, so it will cost higher. It will lead to loss for your company, kan? Specific corrective action must be developed. Corrective action must be in place to determine the disposition, and then fix or correct the process. Maintain record of corrective action taken due to the deviation. A well-designed corrective action will include the name or designation of who is to act, who need to take the responsibility to adjust the parameter, for example, whether or not the production line should be stopped. Do we need to stop the production line because it will lead to loss line? A system for identification of suspect lot or batches. If, for example, the product is already finished and moved to the warehouse, how do you identify the defect batch? Detail of action to correct, instruction for the disposal. So this is corrective action, and this is the, for example, of emergency button. Do in this case, for example, in this situation, do we need to push this button? So there are some parameters that you have to fulfill before you push this button. Next, establish corrective action. Should a deviation occur, the following steps should be taken. The plant will place the product on hold, so pending completion of appropriate corrective action and analyze. Expert and regulatory agencies are to be consulted to determine the addition testing, or maybe you can rework the product, or you have just to throw away. Identification of deviant lots and corrective action. Staff must be aware that safety comes before quality and financial consideration. The first thing first, you have to ensure that you yourself as a worker is safe before the financial consideration. Again, this is some example of batch numbering. Next, verification procedure. Show me the application of method, procedure, test, and other evaluation in addition to monitoring to determine compliance with the HACCP plan. We want to ensure that the process that is developed is comply with the HACCP plan. It also want to ensure that the HACCP plan is working effectively. There are 4 processes involved in verification. First, scientific and technical process lah. It requires involvement of highly skilled professional from your team. The process consists of review of the critical limit. You have to verify, for example, temperature. You set 10. Is it true 10? So you have to validate numbers lah. Verification of facility, HACCP plan, revalidation of document, periodical validation, and deal with the government regulatory lah. So HACCP activities is routine, not seasonal lah. So it may include the everyday activities. That's why we have a specific team on the HACCP. So what is the most common verification activity in HACCP? So you can think of it. Is it audit? So by doing audit, regular audit, yearly audit, you can verify that is your process is good to fulfill the HACCP plan. Next, establish record keeping. For sure, after everything you have done, you have to record and document. Provide written evidence. You have written evidence and also image if something occur kan. And also report. The local person or position responsible and duration of record retention of all monetary record should be described in the master document. It must be reviewed daily, filed and kept at least for 7 years. The audit file, HACCP file. Record keeping should include the monitoring result of your CP, any deviation and corrective action apply, and any modification you make for food safety plan. So it's important to record everything. We have to listing the HACCP team and assign responsibilities such as appointment letter and etc. Minute of meeting, description of the product and its intended use, and flow diagram. This is some report summary on the process tab, CCP, CL, monitoring, preventive, record. So don't afraid to record all the activities happen or even defect happen. We have to record it for us to learn from our previous mistake lah. So this is the Ministry of MOH certification. Differences between MESTI, GMP and HACCP. So MESTI means Makanan Selamat Tanggungjawab Industri. It is valid for 3 years and it is a premise-based certification. Meanwhile GMP, Good Manufacturing Practices, valid for 3 years and it's also premise-based. Meanwhile HACCP, Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point, also 3 years, but it is a product-based certification. So different product should have a different HACCP certification. Okay? So you can read more on the history of Pillsbury, and then HACCP system and guideline, and then CCP, and then control check rule and interpretation lah. This is you can click the link. I think that's all from our lecture today. Thank you so much for your attention, and don't forget to complete the simple activity in click. Thank you very much, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.